Fired FBI Director James Comey finally got around to testifying before Congress this morning, the most anticipated moment so far in this endless Russia investigation. The hearing lasted 4 exhausting hours, but that was just the beginning. The analysis is next. The partisan lying, the moral preening, the purely unsupported speculative BS you see run on a continuous loop on the screen. That'll no doubt go on for weeks, if not years, as each faction tries to get the jump on writing its version of history. Our advice, approach it all with skepticism. There's an awful lot of propaganda out there. Here, in our opinion anyway, is what actually happened today and what we learned from it. First, all those leaks you've been reading about lately, at least one of them came from the director of the FBI himself. We know this because Comey admitted it. After being fired, Comey concedes he sent a memo describing a meeting he'd had with the president to a friend of his, who then gave it to the New York Times. Comey explained he did this to try to force the appointment of a special prosecutor.
It didn't dawn on me originally that there might be corroboration for our conversation. There might be a tape. And my judgment was I needed to get that out into the public square. And so I asked a friend of mine to share the content of the memo with a reporter. Didn't do it myself for a variety of reasons, but I asked him to because I thought that might prompt the appointment of a special counsel.
Well, second, we learned that many of the other leaks and big scoops from major news outlets are lies. In February, for example, the New York Times published a piece entitled "Trump Campaign Aides Had Repeated Contacts with Russian Intelligence," and it cited those ubiquitous current and former American officials you see quoted in virtually every story these days. According to Comey, the article was garbage.
That report by the New York Times was not true. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, in the main, it was not true. The people talking about it often don't really know what's going on, and those of us who actually know what's going on are not talking about it. And we don't call the press to say, hey, you got that thing wrong about this sensitive topic. We just have to leave it there.
Unless we're leaking to the press ourselves. But that wasn't the only lie that made it into the news cycle recently. On Tuesday, CNN cited an unnamed source to claim that James Comey would deny ever telling President Trump he wasn't under investigation. Trump claimed that he told him that 3 times. CNN said that's not true. Well, less than a day later, the release of Comey's opening statement proved that to be laughably false. The obvious lesson here, nameless leakers, the group that's been responsible more than anyone else for fueling the past 7 months of media hysteria, often lie. And that makes sense. They're not giving their names for a reason. Maybe reporters ought to take that into account before acting as their stenographers, as they so often do. Third, we learned that while investigating Hillary Clinton's private email server, Attorney General Loretta Lynch asked Comey to soft-pedal what was actually happening. She instructed him to call the whole thing a matter rather than what it was, an investigation. Now, that's political pressure if there ever was such a thing, but Comey went along with it anyway.
We were getting to a place where the Attorney General and I were both going to have to testify and talk publicly about it, and I wanted to know, was she going to authorize us to confirm we had an investigation? And she said, yes, but don't call it that, call it a matter. And I said, why would I do that? And she said, just call it a matter. It gave the impression that the Attorney General was looking to align the way we talked about our work with the way a political campaign was describing the same activity, which was inaccurate.
But wait, there's inconsistent behavior here. Why did Comey agree to make untrue statements that echoed the Clinton campaign's talking points? He just admitted he did that. And then refused to publicly say something completely true about President Trump, namely that he was not under investigation. Why did Comey make and then leak detailed memos about his meetings with President Trump, but apparently do nothing in response to the political pressure he received from the previous Attorney General, Loretta Lynch? And was this the only time that the Obama administration exerted political pressure on James Comey? We still don't know the answer to that last question, and it might be worth asking. Fourth, we learned today that President Trump talks and acts a lot like a New York City real estate developer, one who is highly aggressive and does not understand the importance of precise language or care. Comey's testimony reveals a president who is used to the world of business, where the guy on top wields absolute authority and who doesn't yet grasp the sometimes vital nuances of managing the executive branch of government. Now, those nuances can be taught, obviously, but Comey also revealed that for some reason he didn't bother helping the president with this and instead let him just flail around and then took notes on it.
You told the president, I would see what we could do. What did you mean?
That was kind of a slightly cowardly way of trying to avoid telling him we're not going to do that, that I would see what we could do. It was a way of kind of getting off the phone, frankly. And then I turned and handed it to the acting Deputy Attorney General, Mr. Bente.
And finally, fifth and most important by far, we learned that the Russian collusion story, the one we've been force-fed by Democrats in the Congress and their handmaidens in the media for months now, is starting to look weaker than ever. The heart of this entire scandal, the reason we haven't been allowed to focus on the many actual problems in this country, is the claim that Donald Trump deliberately collaborated with Vladimir Putin's government in order to win power and undermine America's own fundamental interests. Now, if that's actually true, Comey didn't suggest it today or even come close. Instead, he confirmed that Trump was never under investigation and offered no evidence or testimony suggesting he should be under investigation. We've also been told that if Trump didn't actually collude with Russia himself, he maneuvered to protect those around him who did collaborate or collude with Russia. But Comey, in fact, declared just the opposite today. Trump told him that if his, quote, satellite associates did something wrong, it'd be good to catch them, that the FBI ought to continue looking into that. Sure, Trump expressed his hope that General Flynn would go free, but even Comey conceded that no one's ever been prosecuted for hoping anything.
You don't know of anyone that's ever been charged for hoping something. Is that a fair statement?
I don't, as I sit here.
So let's see, where are we now? A month of shrieking hype, millions of words of ink, hundreds of hours of the shrillest television ever produced add up to pretty much nothing. We've got precisely as much proof right now that President Trump committed treason as we had 7 months ago when all of this started. But that doesn't mean we've learned nothing. We have learned some things. We've seen the FBI exposed as a political battleground, and that is not reassuring to us citizens. We've had the executive branch's effectiveness compromised by dozens of politically motivated leaks, many of them untrue. We've had the media uncritically cheer on what has become unambiguously an attempt to bureaucratically overthrow a democratically elected leader. It's been a total disaster, a man-made one, and it's hard to see who outside of Washington has benefited from any of it. Congressman Mark Pocan represents Wisconsin. Congressman Tim Ryan represents Ohio. They're both Democrats, and they both watched the hearing stage to the extent that they could. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Congressman Ryan, first to you. How does any of this help your constituents back in Ohio?
It doesn't. That's why we want to be talking about jobs. But your presentation there, Tucker, and I love you, but you left out the fact that the Republicans control the House, Republicans control the Senate. That was a Republican hearing we just saw.
That's true.
Both of those Republican committees are trying to investigate this, are investigating this. So it's not a Democratic initiative on our part. It's Republicans. You talk about. Hold on, let me finish.
That's a fair point. I'm not here to defend Republicans. But the storyline is being driven by Democrats, and some Republicans stupidly are going along with it. I agree.
We drive a lot of stories that when you have a congressional investigation by Republicans, it should elevate this whole debate above partisan politics, which is what we're trying to do here. You also mentioned Comey with Loretta Lynch. I don't think Loretta Lynch or Hillary Clinton or anyone else thinks James Comey was taking a dive for the Democrats.
Well, then,
so your whole presentation there completely misconstrued, really, in my estimation, the facts on the ground.
Taking a dive for the Democrats, I think that James Comey, Congressman Pocan, admitted today, not to get too precise about it, that he went along with Loretta Lynch's command to refer to this as a matter rather than an investigation, and that was a Clinton campaign talking point. I'm not saying anyone ought to be impeached over it, but it does raise the question, to what extent was the previous administration putting political pressure on this guy?
Tucker, you showed about 6 minutes of a 3-hour hearing. There's another 2 hours and 54 minutes where he said that the president lied, but he said that the president lied. He talked about Vice President Pence maybe knowing about Michael Flynn before he previously has admitted he knew about the situation around Michael Flynn. We learned a whole lot of other things that should make every American, regardless of political party, very concerned. So,
really, so what exactly? And please be specific. What have we learned about the core allegation? The whole reason we're doing this is because the left alleged that they lost the election because Russia somehow hacked our election with the help of Donald Trump. Did we learn anything about that today?
What we learned when 17 intelligence agencies told us the Russians tried to interfere and did with our elections.
That's not a true fact. 17 did not. 3 out of 17. Just as a factual matter.
I've read the classified report, and I can tell you without a question, we know they interfered with our elections with the intent of electing Donald Trump. So we know that. The question is, when you heard this testimony, we're finding out more and more about the possible collusion between not just the campaign officials of Donald Trump, but perhaps people in the cabinet, perhaps his family members.
Really, so
perhaps
let's be really specific, because we've gone back and forth for 7 months, you and I. What specifically did we learn today about, and I'm quoting you, the collusion between the Trump people and the government of Vladimir Putin?
We heard outright that the president lied about how he's been describing the narrative of the conversations that he had with the FBI director. So that alone tells us that there's
collusion between Trump and Putin?
Obstruction of justice, closer and closer to all these issues. I would argue, Tucker, don't you think
go back and answer my question?
Where's
the evidence
Tucker,
of collusion?
If there was collusion, if there was collusion during the campaign, wouldn't you say that's treasonous?
Well, I would say it's crazy. It's horrible. If a president is acting against his own country's interest. So my question is,
Congress is trying to get to the bottom of this. Exactly. We're trying to get to the bottom of this.
You represent a state. Hold on. Where, after 7 months, is any evidence? I keep asking you, and you haven't provided any evidence. 7 months. Like, what is this?
There's been no formal investigation. We have a head of the Republican head of the Intelligence Committee who has to recuse himself. We have an Attorney General who had to recuse himself. Let's have an independent commission. If the president has nothing to hide, he should be for an independent commission so we can move on to jobs and health care and everything else we need to do.
Okay, so here's the lead, Congressman Ryan, in the Cleveland Plain Dealer, hardly a right-wing newspaper today. How can government help in the opioid crisis? Ohio matters. The Comey stuff is buried in the back section because the truth is, and I'm not just saying this demagogically, it's true, this stuff is a distraction from a country that's hurting. Your district, you are well known for caring about the issues in your district, none of which include Russia. This is paralyzing our government, and there's still no evidence it's real. So, like, what's the point of all this?
It's paralyzing our government because Donald Trump fired the head of the FBI who was investigating him, potentially, his campaign, absolutely, about Russian influence in our presidential election and possibly tipping the balance. So if Trump wanted us to talk about jobs, hold on, I'm not finished. If he wanted us to talk about jobs, he should have left Comey in place, let the investigation move forward, say to the American people, there's nothing to hide here, I'm not going to lie about anything.
Stupid. I mean, the investigation is going forward, actually, as you well know. It's in progress right now. The criminal investigation by the FBI is in progress. It would never slow
and
for
so
one
is
day.
the Republican Senate and Republican House Intelligence Committees.
Here's the point. At some juncture, members of Congress who are using this scandal to distract from the fact that they've alienated the American working class and unions and all your traditional base, they're not for you anymore. Instead of dealing with their problems, it's like Russia, Russia, Russia. And I'm just waiting for the day when someone can say, is there evidence?
Tucker, are you not going to ask Donald Trump to take any responsibility at all for this?
What?
For firing the head of the FBI who was investigating him.
To fire the guy, but the core allegation
and then think everyone's just going to go back to doing business? He fired the head of the FBI who's investigating his administration. What the hell did he think was going to happen?
Can you honestly look at me right in the face and say that James Comey should have been the head of the FBI after the behavior he displayed during this election? No normal person watching that can say, I want this guy to be FBI director. No, I'm serious. After what he did to Hillary Clinton and going back and forth.
Oh, my goodness.
No, I'm not joking.
I'm amazed at your concern for Hillary Clinton.
I'm not concerned. I'm concerned about the rule of law.
The last time I was on, I said, look, if he fired him the day after he was inaugurated, okay, fine.
I honestly think this may be the last time I speak to Democrats about Russia because I feel like it's fundamentally unreasonable. If the president collaborated with a foreign power, that is treason. It's a huge charge to make. All this time has been spent looking into it, and we are no closer to showing that actually happened. Can you concede that or not? I'm not defending Trump as an American.
Every single week, we've had more information
that there's
about what's
collusion between Trump and Russia. Are you kidding? Where is it?
Trump campaign officials. Most recently, Jared Kushner is now being questioned. His son-in-law. I mean, let's face it. Every single week, more and more trickles out.
So being questioned is the same as being guilty. Where's the evidence?
Independent commission could clear all this up.
Liberals are arguing
we could clear all this up, Tucker.
To imply something is the same as to prove it.
No, independent commission would clear all this up. If you have an attorney general who has to recuse himself, which is unusual, and then the Republican ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee has to recuse himself, there's a lot of unusual behavior going on.
For Putin. I totally agree. You guys read about the McCarthy period at all? I'm serious.
Tucker, why don't you ask President Trump to take any responsibility? Is he not responsible for any of this?
With Russia?
For firing the head of the FBI, for giving secrets to the Russians in the White House. I mean, how much further do you want to lie?
This is actually insane. This is insane. This is crazy. That he somehow subverted American national security by giving secrets to the Russians in the White House.
But you're talking about
just not
you're
true.
talking
I
about
think
paralyzing government,
Okay.
which we are right now, and then you're trying to blame the Democrats who don't control the House or don't control
blaming
the Senate.
Republicans as well. I think this whole story is a massive lie.
All right,
I think it's mass hysteria at its worst, and I think it's scary how people can get so irrational. That's what I really
So I don't want you talking to Republicans either now.
Good point.
Okay.
Gentlemen, thank you.